Alright guys, welcome back to the Hard Angle Barn YouTube channel. Today I'm going to pull the SR out of Jeremy's 240 so we can figure out what the oil pressure issue is. This is my first time pulling an SR all by myself. I didn't even put it in all by myself. I was originally just supposed to build the motor. I wasn't supposed to end up building the whole car. But here we are, let's pop it out.
Hey guys, real quick before we get too deep into it, this video was actually filmed before the video where I was dailying this 240. I don't know how I got it out of order, but I just forgot to edit it and put it up. So this was actually supposed to be released between the video of when we found the big issue and then the video of dailying the car. So just for context.
So I made this plate using an old rusty piece of scrap metal. I mean, obviously you can see the texture of the rust. They sell a product that does this, but obviously I couldn't get it today, nor do I really want to pay for it. Bolts on right here, and that gives me a nice sturdy, easy to access lift point on this side of the engine. Over here normally I just wrap a strap underneath the intake and that's pretty strong, and then over here I got something to put the strap around. It's super weird seeing this out like this under the circumstance, knowing I drove this down the road, a couple hours ago and hit boost and everything works. It's just this stupid possible oil pressure issue. Well, not possible, it is an issue. Wish we could touch up this bay, but it's not in the scope of things for this build. Final verdict. I remembered the O-ring 2 years ago. So, that means the oil pump itself is the problem. Most likely wasn't new. Jeremy told me that that oil pump was on this engine when it came from the original engine depot that rebuilt it and somehow forgot to put a rod bearing on rod number 3. So it rod knocked right out the gate. So that oil pump might have had metal in it. It might have, I mean, if they're a shady depot that isn't good at what they're doing, hell, that might have even been a 200,000 mile oil pump that they just cleaned up in an ultrasonic cleaner. I mean, I've made 250,000 parts look brand new. So hopefully tomorrow the oil pump shows up so we can get the motor back together. But right now I'm going to work on, I got the correct turn signal harnesses in, and I got from Wiring Specialties the correct plugs. So I'm going to go ahead and get soldering, which now that I have a soldering iron that actually works well, I really like to do, and see if we can get these turn signals put in so I don't get flipped off every time I'm driving this thing because people think I'm not using my signals. Check that out. This thing's almost a car again. Yes, I did turn on the marker lights. They don't just pop on when I hit the hazards. I just did that for aesthetics. Alright, so I got all the RTV cleaned up the front of the motor. I plugged up the oil feed hole so I wouldn't spray any carb cleaner in it. Why do I call it carb cleaner? It's brake cleaner. Brake cleaner. I don't use carb cleaner. Anyway, so that's all clean. I sprayed the chain with some WD-40 just so it doesn't rust. All the steel stuff's protected. So I pulled the number 2. Crank looks great. The bearing's got some side wear and stuff, but any of the wear that's in it is with the grain of the metal and not with the rotation of the crank. There's this little scratch mark here, but that's actually from the telescoping gauges we use to check the bearing size. And if that's still there, that's a pretty good sign, because those aren't like, you can't actually feel that. It's not like there's a divot in the metal. I think we're going to be okay. So piston number 1, the crank looks pretty good. Actually, I have some little towel lint on there I got to wipe off. But rod number 1 tells a little bit different story. Now here's the thing. This has the same wear like the first one on the edges of the bearing where it's wearing in. But it's got those 2 scratches that would act like metal went through, and obviously it's near the oil feed hole. Thing is, you can't really feel them. If you run your nail across it, it's like you can feel it to a level where you almost feel like you're imagining it. So we're gonna have to wait and make a call. We'll decide if we're gonna run it like this, you know, if we're gonna do another build down the road, or if we want to make this last forever. So a little further proof that this oil pump wasn't new. Look at all the blow by. Like up here it's not that bad, but down there, how bronze it is. If you look inside the motor, this stuff has all been exposed to it just as long, and there's no blow by mark at all. But then this is brown, and this is what a new oil pump actually looks like. That's not a new pump. OEM O-ring. Installed. Okay, so new oil pump's on. The oil pans, or the upper oil pan's on, and the new strainer is installed with a new ISR gasket. And the front oil pump, as you saw, has a new OEM O-ring.
Got a black spot in the camera.
Yep.
Okay.
Part of the broken glass. Look at all this. This is gobs of silicone. When we first built Jeremy's SR, we just used some Harbor Freight bolts so that we could get the thing bolted on because there was no hardware for it. But I finally went ahead and I got some zinced flange bolts that are the right length. And hopefully this will make Jeremy's motor look just a little bit better, because we didn't spruce it up or anything. It was originally supposed to be a cheap build. We didn't know we were going to spend $80,000 million Tech swapping it and doing the front end swap, but I think Jeremy will like having just a little bit of bling bling on the valve cover. It's about time we got some proper bolts anyway. Alright, here's the stock water temp sensor. Here's the glow shift one, 1/8 inch 27 NPT, and then this adapter is obviously the same thread as the stock. Motor's in, bolted down. Obviously the alternator and the power steering pump are hooked up. Heater core's hooked up, some vacuum lines are done. The exhaust is bolted on. Gotta put the O2 sensor in now that I think about it. Obviously all the bell housing bolts are in. So tomorrow, wiring, pop it in, radiator, intercooler piping, and it'll be back to running. Well, I wait for the silicone to dry to hold this fitting in, since obviously the stock one's missing. I just wanted to point out because I think it's funny. I want to make sure I don't start this motor and cost myself a ton of money and time by starting it with no oil and blowing it up. Alright, it's first start, second first start time, third first, what first start are we on now? A bunch. Also, it might run kind of rough. I need to, obviously I need to reset the timing. It's going to be kind of close, but not perfect. Show you this. It's about 90 degrees outside, so the oil in the bottle is probably around there. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Why do all these cars do this? I bet it just blew the oil filter off because the threads were kind of iffy. See that speck of blue down there behind the alternator? That's an oil filter that's not on the motor anymore. Yeah, I thought those threads felt sketchy. It felt like it only had 2 or 3 of them engaged. So I guess now that it has proper oil pressure, it's gonna blast the filter off. So I drained the pan out into my clean pot, and I have just under 3 quarts of oil left. There was about half a quart left in this bottle, anywhere between half to 3/4 of a quart. I overfilled it a tiny little bit, but now I got 3 quarts, and since this cost is on me anyway, I'm just going to use that oil in my Sentra that likes to burn oil. So, you know, another try tomorrow when I get the right filter. To go over that actually real quick, I was using an ST6607, which is good for some of the newer SRs, for like front wheel drives, because obviously we don't want to wait super long for a Nissan filter, and we also don't want to spend what the Nissan filter costs when it's basically the same as everything else on the market. So this will fit like the 95 to 98 front wheel drive SRs and the S14 SR20 DETs, but I have to go get like a 91 to 94 SR20 DE filter to fit the S13 motor. I guess I'm going off what's based on what the internet forums say from 10 years ago. So let's see if that info still holds true. I was actually prepared ahead of time, and I had 5 extra quarts of oil set aside just in case something happened. Well, guess what? The in case is coming into case. I'm not sure, that didn't make any sense. So here's the main differences between the filter I was running versus the filter I should be running. These are pretty much flush with the O-ring, and these are recessed a bit more. So these will grab more threads than this one, and it shouldn't come shooting off the side of the motor. So this is all my local auto parts store had in stock at the time. Mobil 1, M1 103A. Hopefully this will work with the S13 motor. So I just reached up in there and got that thing all cleaned off, and it doesn't look like there's any damaged threads. So I guess it had just so little on it that, you know, popped right off. All right, round 2. That's pretty good oil pressure. Now I want to mention before I dive exhaust fumes have to get out of this. This gauge will no longer work. This coolant temp gauge, the stock one. This one will work, and this one will not. Since this one read inaccurately, this one now is the temperature gauge. We should operate around 170 to 190. That's optimal. And for the first time, we're showing some temp. Look at that, we're already at about 110. Oil's heating up a little bit. Now we're about 60 psi at idle, which is, oh cool, half the dash went out again. It'll come back on. Anyway, we're idling at about 800 RPM. It looks like 700 RPM. So if I get in real close, you can see we're at about 500 RPM idle. And our oil pressure is at about, let's call that what, 34 psi. And if I rev this at all up to 1500, see how it shoots right up? It did not do that before. So, and we're at about 145 degrees. No, sorry, that's not 160, that's 180. So that's about 155. So the camera makes it look not as bad, but it's really smoky in here. I'm gonna go ahead and stop for tonight, let the barn air out, and then try again tomorrow when we get out of the barn now that she's running again. So I just took it on a little 2-mile test drive. You can see we're nice and warm, we're at 180. And I got about 12 pounds of oil pressure at like, I don't know, 700 RPM. So if we bring that up to 1200, or like 2500, you're at 60. So very healthy. And of course, obviously, with oil pressure, the little ticky noise in the head is gone. So that's good. And bad. I mean, it's bad because it did it for so long, but good because it's gone. And there we have it. The hood is back on. She's ready to get broken in. So I just checked the alignment on this, and I'm not actually sure why it pulls one way so much or why it feels like that, because it's only got about 2 millimeters of toe. So it honestly should be pretty decent. Alright, so I just gave it what I like to call a race alignment. It has about a 0.5 millimeter of toe in, so it's almost dead straight. I know for street driving you want to have a little bit of toe, but these feel pretty good as far as the driving experience goes. 2,000 RPM, we got 60 PSI pressure, so woo! I'm like a little kid in a candy store. Oh, the dash lights went out. Hold on. Alright, cool. The dash lights don't work. This tiny little Garrett turbo spools super fast. Like if I'm at 3,000 RPM, we're at 15 pounds or 15 inches of mercury. Step on it, full boost at 3,200 RPM. Granted, again, it's only running 7 pounds. It's on a stock wastegate, but yeah, I think it's ready to start street driving. Paying what is it, $5.50 for premium right now. Okay, so now that we took it for a cruise, we're about 184 degrees, and we are at 14 pounds at 900 RPM. So yeah, we're good.
I'm just calling to say I